Good morning. I simply have to tell you about this fantastic short story that I read last night. Well, Repeat Sheep was roosting, so he didn't read the story at all. No, he didn't. And he isn't interested in it, except for the chewing possibilities, which he isn't going to get a chance at because this is the best of C.L. Moore. I'm still reading through the short stories. I'm very glad to have the book. Thanks to Robert from L-Space, who has contributed beautifully to my 2026 reading capacity. Okay, so the short story we're talking about is the number... Ooh, where's it gone? There it is. No. Acknowledgements is not what I want. Okay, Fruit of Knowledge is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, if you include the introduction, which you absolutely should, in this book. And it is a fantastic story. It is a retelling of your old Garden of Eden story. You've got Adam in the Garden of Eden, just created by God. And it sent me down a huge theological rabbit hole, which I've enjoyed thoroughly this morning. And I'm going to tell you about that later, but first the story. So we start our story with a cherub who's flying around the Garden of Eden. He's just flown over this gorgeous pool, and the writing is beautifully descriptive, as C.L. Moore is known for. I believe, at least I know her for that. And there's this woman who's just discovered that you can see your reflection in the pool of water. So it's very much this naive discovery atmosphere, and she's catching glimpses of herself, and she's described with this beautiful, smooth innocence that you would expect in the Garden of Eden. Anyway, the cherub comes up to her and does that condescending little thing. You'll enjoy it here, I think, like happens amongst humans all the time. And then he asks her name, and her name she gives as Lilith, and we had been expecting Eve. Now, if you're really familiar with the Adam and Eve mythology, you're surprised to find Eve standing on her own in a pool, knowing where Adam is automatically and all these other things, but you fly with it. It's a science fiction story. It's a speculative fiction. And then she gives her name as Lilith, so it completely throws you on your ears, as it were, mixes it all about. The cherub is horrified. He sort of walks and he goes, "The Queen of Air and Darkness. God will not be happy that you're here." And she just smiles and does her thing, and she goes off and finds Adam with the cherub coming back and forth with its rainbow wings and warning Adam about her, how God will not be happy that she's there. Now, it turns out that Lilith is there because Adam wanted a woman so much. He'd named all the creatures and noticed that for every male there was a female, and he didn't have one, so he imagined one. And he imagined and he wanted so strongly that Lilith, who was in the ether among the stars, was drawn down into this form, which was apparently the form that Adam had imagined for himself. She is given as dark-haired, I'm pretty sure. Could be wrong. Pretty sure. Not sure. Anyhow, she meets up with Adam, and they're doing their thing, and Lilith knows from the start that their time there is limited because God is on his day of rest, and there are hosannas being sung in the heavens around the heavenly throne, and when all of that day of rest is done, God's probably going to notice she's there and he's going to evict her because she is pure evil. And Adam has no idea, and he's intoxicated by her because, being completely innocent of not having eaten from the fruit of knowledge yet, he doesn't know evil, he only knows innocence and goodness, so he imbues her with those characteristics. Lilith herself is struggling significantly. Did I mention there's going to be spoilers? It's a short story. Yeah, spoilers to the max. Lilith herself is struggling because she has never had a physical form before. After all, God has just created physical form in the sense of creating the Garden of Eden and the animals and all that. It's the seventh day. And never having been in a physical form, she doesn't really know how to deal with it. She is loving it. She's loving the feeling of the cool breeze on her skin, the warmth of the sun. She's loving all these things, but she's also young and Adam's mate, so she's got hormones and she ain't dealing with them too well. She does not understand this whole feelings taking her over thing. And it's this journey of innocence to knowledge that is absolutely fantastical because of the knowing character of Lilith, who is thousands of years old and immortal, but she is now physical for the first time. And then you've got Adam. Adam is godlike, beautiful, as he's been created by God and everything. Anyway, so while they're wandering around the Garden of Eden, with Lilith leaning her head on his godlike shoulder. Sorry about the godlike. I've just been reading the Iliad. It scarred me. They're getting used to the garden. He's showing her around. It's all gorgeous and hormonal. And she hears the sound of fighting in heaven. And that, of course, is the battle as described by Christian mythology, by Milton, I'm pretty sure at least, of Satan fighting against God because he doesn't want to bow down to Adam, God's creation. What a well of theology this book is. Fantastic. Moore must have read extensively to get so much stuff and do so much good stuff with it, but how did she have time? She and her husband, they produced so many books. Anyway, so there's a battle in heaven, but we hear that Adam and Lilith are completely and utterly intoxicated, and the sounds of the battle fade. So that's the curtain that old movies draw in front of the bedroom before anything happens, I'm guessing. Now, when Lilith first met Adam, he said he'd found the perfect name for his wife, and it was Eve, and she goes, that's a very nice name, but it's not my name is Lilith. So right there you've got a lot of things that are going to upset people who are truly into the theology and want it to be right. But for a science fiction or speculative fiction reader, or for someone who just likes mythology for its own sake, this is a magnificent story. I'm actually talking about this more than I have about some full books. After spending a lot of time with Adam, Lilith feels the need to refresh herself. So she leaves her body behind, sleeping on his shoulder, and goes up into the ether. She travels between the stars. She refreshes herself, and we get that she had a intent in doing that because she is pure evil. She's got all these plans to corrupt Adam and pull him away from God and make the garden into her own province, because Adam himself is of the garden. They are the same flesh because he was made from the clay of the garden. And we've already seen them both look at the scar that is slowly healing on the side of the mountain where Adam's clay was dug out of, metaphysically dug out of. But still, you get it. Anyhow, after her cruise through the stars, Lilith comes back, and when she goes to go back into the body that she's left sleeping by Adam, she finds that someone else is already there. Yes, while she was away, God was not resting on his laurels. It is the 8th day. It is no longer the day of rest, and he has created Eve into the flesh that Lilith made. Somehow. Because he also used Adam's rib. Don't know. Don't ask. And just enjoy. Anyhow, so Eve wakes up and she's completely taking Adam's attention, and Lilith is bereft. Sure, she had a plan, and it was a plan to bring everything to evil, but she was genuinely, physically, and emotionally attached to Adam, and he's now been taken away from her by this blonde little twit who keeps shrieking. We sympathize with Lilith, let's be honest. Anyhow, Lilith still hasn't given up, and she talks to Satan, who has not yet been condemned by God to be a snake on his belly, but is instead represented as a gorgeous guy. Adam's gorgeous, Satan's gorgeous, Garden of Eden, right? But covered in scales, iridescent scales, I believe. Anyway, Satan and Lilith hatch a plot to get Eve to eat from the fruit of knowledge, whereupon God will strike her down, giving Lilith a second chance at Adam. It goes awry, as we know from literature. The snake does entice Eve, and though, again, it's off camera, it's a much sexier enticing than Genesis would have us know. And Eve goes and she takes an apple. It's still an apple at that stage, early in the theology debate. Takes a bite as Lilith gets there with Adam, and there's this huge emotional battle between the different ones for who will win. And Then God comes down. Instead of throwing a lightning bolt at Eve, killing her, and giving Lilith free reign with Adam, he just banishes them from the garden, though again, that happens off camera. He turns Satan into a snake slithering on his belly. And Lilith has understood from the start that this heaven is actually a testing ground to see what Adam is made of, how obedient Adam will be, what he will do. So Lilith goes back off into the ether. Moving on from what happens at the end, we all know the Adam and Eve and Garden of Eden story. Even if we're not religious, it's permeated pop culture to such an extent that everyone knows it. Anyhow, it is a fantastic story. It is gorgeous, it is emotional, it's tightrope, it's everything you want in a story. And if you like C.L. Moore, or even if you don't, or if you like theology, or if you like weird stories, this one is for you. Absolutely. The Fruit of Knowledge by C.L. Moore, here in this gorgeous collection. Now, having read this and enjoyed it so much, two things happened. For a start, I fell down a huge rabbit hole of theology, and for a second, I felt I absolutely had to reread Powell Anderson's The Queen of Air and Darkness, because all those references to Lilith being Queen of Air and Darkness brought this short story to my head, and I'm going to read that next. But the Lilith thing. So Lilith did become very much an icon for feminism, and I think that happened around the 60s and the 70s, so it's probably completely around C.L. Moore's time when she was reading and... Oh, copyright. 1940. Okay, this was a lot earlier than I thought. Anyhow, Lilith did become this icon of feminist thought. She was Adam's wife, but she wasn't submissive like Eve. There's all kinds of ways in which Lilith is incorporated into that particular mythological setting. But that's not quite where I went. I went, well, where is Lilith first mentioned? Now, I love Genesis stories, so I've read the Old Testament Genesis story a number of times. Yes, I know it's also Christian, but Christianity basically took it from the Jewish Bible, so it's a Jewish myth. And I've read it in a few different translations, and like most people who've read it, I have been confused by the fact that it reiterates that God made Adam and Eve, and it reiterates that in two slightly different forms. That is a thing that I guess we all who have read it went through at some stage. Then I started thinking maybe this notion of Lilith came from Milton. Incidentally, one of those times when I reread Genesis, it was specifically to find where Lilith was mentioned. Lilith is not mentioned in the Old Testament. Lilith is not mentioned in any Bible, per se, and as such. There are names that are similar. Bird. Say hello to your adoring fans. There are names that are similar, like Lilith, which somehow got translated, I believe, into King James as hooting owl. But it's a fascinating concept, and it's not traditional. What do we want? We could just fly. You are a bird. You can fly. He does forget that. Since he has a magic carpet. Magic carpet. Okay, so Lilith, not appearing in any actual Bibles, any biblical forces at all. There are words in biblical sources that resemble it. Okay. Sorry for the bit. Trying to figure out what this little featherhead wants, and I've got no idea, to be honest. I thought of Milton. I read Paradise Lost a few years ago, and a lot of the things about Christian beliefs and Christian mythology that one doesn't understand, if you didn't grow up in Christianity, can be traced to Milton's Paradise Lost. Paradise Lost was a great read, and I'm glad I went there, but it was also written in the, 17th century? think it was 17th century. It's pretty old. It's been around for a long time. But it doesn't mention Lilith at all. I checked. Lilith, as a character, seems to be come mostly from... decide for yourself, okay? There you go. Flying bird. Lilith as a concept seems to appear first in Mesopotamian documents. And now I want to go back and read the Epic of Gilgamesh, maybe after the Queen of Air and Darkness. She isn't described as a character there. Lilith or something very similar seems to be connected to a demon, Lamashtu or something like that, who shares similar traits and a similar position in mythology to Lilith, only the mythology itself in question is very dubious. So Mesopotamian is about 2,000 years before current era, I believe, so that's pretty early. Of course, but Mesopotamian creation myth is nothing like the Jewish Bible creation myth, though Mesopotamian mythology and mythology does share a lot of areas with Jewish mythology and biblical sources. So now, as well as the Bible, the Jewish has a lot of other mythology, and one of them is the Talmud, in which Lilith does appear as a she-demon, but that isn't a biblical source. That's a post-biblical source. So that was interesting. And then I fell down yet another rabbit hole and added another rare and unusual book to my I want to find it list. There's a book called The Alphabet of Sirach, which was written in the Islamic world between 700 and 1000. So around about the time Islam was first appearing, which is the best time to read myths from countries. If you read the mythology that comes from around the time when it was first being devoured by one of the larger religions, you can get some fascinating stories of pre-Christian or pre-Islamic beliefs. So now I really want to read The Alphabet of Sirach. It's anonymous, but apparently it is composed partly of old Aramaic, Jewish Babylonian Aramaic proverbs, and then there's a second lot of lists, which is also stories. So that sounds really great, and apparently Lilith is mentioned in that one. So if so, we've got the really old Lilith as a she-demon in Mesopotamia, so 4,000 years ago. Then we've got this 700s, possibly to 10,000 reappearance of it. You've got it in the Talmud. You've got this rare largely demonic figure that keeps reappearing, but which has really resonated with modern times, because in modern literature she is used in so many different ways. The feminist regime, she is used as the antithesis of Eve, because if Eve was innocent and created by God, then Lilith was already there and less innocent, shall we say. So yes, that was a long rabbit hole that I fell down. It was great. I enjoyed it. I do need to read The Queen of Air and Darkness now. Thank you for watching, if you are still watching. And this time, I'm not going to say read good books. Read good short stories, because I'm doing really well with the short stories at the moment. Bye.